Hi, everyone. It's nice to be back here on the Diaspora Circle. As many of you know, the Diaspora Circle is a platform which kind of like shares the experiences of young African professionals living in the diaspora all around the world. And we really come together to share thoughts, share ideas around the issues that most concern us, the issues that are most pertinent to us. We come on here and we talk about it, we share it, and we do our best to proffer solutions to, again, just, share our experiences in the diaspora with a link to Africa and back home and how we can be part of the development going on, and also a way to encourage each other and just be there for one another. Today, we are talking about the Nigeria that made us. We are from Nigeria and we're both currently in the diaspora. And this was a conversation that just started organically. And so I invited my longtime friend, somebody I've known for over, 2 decades now. And we decided to get together to talk about this. So welcome.
Thanks, Obi. Thanks for telling the world that we're very young. Good job.
Exactly, 2 decades, right?
Good job, girl.
So, when we talk about the Nigeria that made us, what comes to mind really is looking at, it's kind of a nostalgic experience, talking about the socioeconomic Nigeria that we grew up in,
Right.
in the 90s, even up until the early 2000s, just juxtaposing that experience that we had growing up and what we have now. And again, as I share with a lot of other Africans in the diaspora, no matter where we are in the world, there's a constant yearning for, for home. We have a never-ending nostalgia about it. It is for lack of a better word, it remains the love of our lives where we're from. That is the place that gave us our really our foundation and really give us a springboard to be ourselves. So we just taking a look at the socio-economic environment that we had growing up. We don't see a lot of that anymore, right? Nigeria was very safe when we were growing up. It was a place that we were complete in where we were. We didn't really yearn for something outside of ourselves. We were very complete, if I can use that expression. And so I really yearn for that. And so I'm inviting you to go on this journey with me to take a look at Nigeria in the 80s and in the 90s as far as the socio-economic space. Do you have any like memories of that?
Oh, loads and loads. And when we first had this discussion, it made me really, really, I don't know what to say, really sad, happy but sad, because you're thinking about your childhood and you're remembering how much fun you had growing up, in that era. Most of our parents worked either in the civil service or, just did honest work. Were middle-class families who were content. We kept hearing things like, remember the child of whom you are, a good name is better than silver or gold, learn the art of contentment, strive for more, but be content with what you have. Those kind of things that just made you happy with what you had, and just lived a normal life. You had neighbors who were from different tribes, and it didn't matter. you know, we of course we knew, oh, this person is from Anambra State or from Akwa Ibom State or from Imo State or from Kaduna, but the person was your neighbor and they were your friends. You know, it was a community. You know, it takes a village to raise a child. That's one of the things that kept resonating with us. I couldn't step out of line and not get a neighbor step in, you know, my friend's mother or my mom step in when somebody was doing something wrong, you know, but so much has changed now, you know, and it breaks my heart, to be honest with you.
Right. When you talk about how it takes a village to raise a child, that just takes me to the fact that at that time there was a lot of stability.
Right.
We were stable as far as security, stable economically. I would even go as far as saying many of us were middle class families or upper middle class. You know, we were really very, very content. There was, again, we were not doing a lot of looking outside of ourselves. We were very okay in the life that we lived. Our communities were safe. Everybody took care of every other person's child, you know. And one place that really exemplified this for me when I went to college was Calabar.
Yeah.
I don't know, there was something about that place. I got there in 1990. I mean, we're going to date ourselves, but
don't do it. Don't do it.
In the mid-90s, right? And it was like, what is this place? What is this place? It was calm. It was safe. The people there were very civil. It just, you know, I think about that town or that city, and it really just encapsulates the Nigeria of that time. We weren't looking for a lot outside of ourselves. One thing I remember was that Calabar was so attractive that academics and researchers and even people of other nationalities who were abroad and doing, you know, working in academia, they found Calabar to be a place that they wanted to come. So you see a lot of families who were not even from Cross River State, but Calabar was that haven. I remember we had a lot of families from like America, and they came back from the UK and Canada. They had people from every tribe, Igbo, Yoruba, you know, even people from the north. You know, Calabar was just this place that was just a very nice blend of all the cultures in Nigeria. But it was rooted in this civil life, in the stable life, in this highly, I would even say, intellectual kind of setting. You remember that, right?
And you wouldn't be wrong with all that whole picture you've painted, because in truth, that's the Calabar I know. You know, my mom is from Cross River State, my dad's from Akwa Ibom, so that's home to me, right? I remember then, you know, being born and raised in Lagos, holidays in Calabar was like the thing we looked forward to with such joy and excitement. Going to Calabar was like, you know, our trip abroad. That's how we saw it, you know, even as Lagosians, you know, thinking that Lagos was the be all and end all of, you know, all that Nigeria was about. And I remember so vividly how it always felt so calm, so much cleaner, so much more peaceful, going and being in my grandmother's house. And, you know, I had neighbors from, like you said, the people you've mentioned, you know, going to secondary school, university, and all of that in Calabar. We had people who came from different parts of the world. I had classmates that came from Namibia. I remember I had Namibian classmates. I had classmates from, if I'm not mistaken, I think there was someone from South Africa, you know, I might be wrong, I don't remember, but Namibian classmates, I remember for sure, you know, and you had, like you mentioned, the academics, you know, the people that were in academia who lived abroad and yearned to come back home. And Calabar was the place they all chose. You know, I had classmates, you know, the Lawals, you know, Oh,
Oh my gosh.
we can name, Obi, you know these people I'm talking
Yes,
about.
I remember
The
so
Enyas,
many family, the Anyas, the
yes,
Ejizis.
the Jay-Z.
Oh,
Those are people that, we all grew up in Calabar, even people who, Chika Diribe, her parents were, lived in Calabar, raised them in Calabar,
and
and
we're
they're
from
Igbo
Imo
people.
State. Yes.
They're Igbo people. But that Calabar is literally like home to them, as in they probably know Calabar better than, their home state, because that's where and it didn't make a difference to them that they were not from Cross River State or Akwa Ibom or Cross, back in the day. And to see where we are now, Obi, when I heard about, how my friends were telling me how Calabar is now so dirty, you couldn't leave trash lying around
Oh
in your
no,
environment.
that town was
Calabar was so
pristine. It
clean.
was clean. I remember getting there as a bright-eyed 17 or 18-year-old, and it was just, and it had a lot of relics of, I mean, you could see the relics of,
Yes, old Calabar.
it
Yes.
it was marked by colonialism. You could see a
Yeah.
lot of the relics of around that. However, you could see that there was, again, I will keep going back to, there was this like freshness. It was like
Right.
it was like clean, and it was just this place. And every time my mind goes back there, it reminds me that that's a Nigeria that is possible. That's a
Yes.
Nigeria that it's possible. We've done it before. We can do it again. That's a Nigeria that is not, the whole idea of, bringing in like development and civility and following regulations. It's possible. We've done it before. We've lived that way.
Yeah. Let me jump in here. So yes, it has colonial roots, but at the time we were born, the colonial masters and all of that had been long gone, right? So it has nothing, because I know somebody will be thinking, oh, is it because the colonial, masters, set the foundation? No. Calabar was being run by Nigerians, Cross Riverians, and people who had, that, I don't know whether to say, I don't know, the passion for a Nigeria that was possible. It was clean. People went to work, they were honest. I remember when I was saying how I never learned to speak Pidgin English when I was in Calabar, because the typical Efik person doesn't speak Pidgin.
Right.
I learned to speak Pidgin when I was much older. It was strange to me. Yes, I was a Lagos girl, but I did a lot of my holiday and all with my grandmother in Calabar, and I never heard Pidgin English. There's this, saying, I think people will relate. They'll say, if read in Makara, more or less, it's literally translated means, the Effiks are, white or whatever. The connotation is we're civilized.
Right.
So the Efik people take pride in the fact that we're very posh, we're very civilized, and it transfers into everything, the way you talk, the way you dress, and I remember mentioning to you how with the Efiks and the BBOs, this whole patriarchy is not strong, because a child is valued, a female, is valued like a male. You give birth to a girl, there's joy. You give birth to a boy, there's joy. That Nigerian mentality of, oh, if you don't have a male child, the Efiks and the BBOs were not like that. That's why Calabar was so, you'd see, the families who had only girls, it made no difference. They would raise the child, give them all of their attention like a regular child. And that, I really, really desire a Nigeria where it's about capacity. It's about who has the ability to lead, and not it's my turn, it's their turn. Oh, we've had the Efiks, so now it's time
I mean, I remember being a little kid, and whenever we had like elections and people were genuinely just going to the polls to vote for who they
believed in,
who they believed was going to make a difference. I remember growing up in Lagos with my family, and the first time I ever voted, we so excitedly went to the polls to vote for Obasanjo. It didn't matter. Like we just had a candidate that we thought, okay, he's gonna make things better, let's go vote. And this is the same for many, 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 many families all across the country. So
Yes.
it's a thing that we can do. It's attainable. I wish there was a way that we could, because the reason why a lot of people move to the diaspora and seek to have a different experience is that the things like stability, things like predictability, things like the indices of development, like public health, public education, those kind of things, the things that make them to another country so that they can experience those things in their lifetime, are things that we know, things that we've experienced as Nigerians. It was very real for us. Growing up, there were public schools and there were private schools. Private schools didn't really become a thing until, I would say, somewhere in the mid-80s. They became they were just like coming. They existed, but they were not a lot.
Exactly. How many people even let their children go to private schools? It was strange.
People
we all went to federal government colleges.
Yeah, even like primary schools. People went to public schools and it was fine. That was what was available, and everyone was great with it. Like a lot of us in our generation went to public school, and that was where we learned everything that we learned. So the reason why people move abroad now, there's been this great influx of people going abroad from Nigeria. Those are the things that they're looking for. And
exactly.
I just know that it's not unattainable for us. We can get there because that's the Nigeria that made us. That's the Nigeria that made you and made me. That's where we got our foundational education. It was mostly public education. I thought we should have this conversation because when we talk about stability and security and a decent wage, a livable wage, access to public health, access to public education, these are not things that we do not know. These are the things that we have experienced, that we have lived. So that Nigeria is possible. And I think that when we get there, I
like the when. I love it.
When we get there, and not if. When we get there, I think that you're going to be seeing greater collaboration between the diaspora and Nigeria. You're going to be seeing greater collaboration because people are still interested in that country. People yearn for that country. That is the bedrock of their lives, but they're forced to live outside of the country. And so we did we talked about this experience using Calabar as an example, but really what we were really highlighting here is that Nigeria is possible. We have lived it, we experienced it. I remember going to public hospitals as a kid. Do you remember the military hospital in Ikoyi, Onikon?
Is it Onikon? Yes.
I went there. That's where you went.
Or Luz in Ijaraba.
Yes.
And those were
possible. We've experienced them. So when we talk about, it's not like we're talking about something that we out there far-fetched.
No.
We live this stuff. All like private practices and private schools, they came later, So, we can, it's a Nigeria that we can achieve.
But it comes back to, what are you willing to do to get to that Nigeria? Sacrifices have to be made. The countries that I never thought I would live abroad. I was such a Nigerian in my spirit and in my soul, and then making the decision to relocate, it's a hard one, at whatever age, but that you've lived a life where you were comfortable, where you were not afraid, of you're not looking back and being afraid of every little thing, and you now come to a place where you get that there's peace of mind, you pay what you pay for, you get value for it. It's not about how much money you have, you get a good, I think you live a good life within your means. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
So
And that's in Nigeria.
everything you are describing is what is how we grew up.
And
In my
that's
opinion.
it.
Like that's
Oh
how we
yes,
grew up.
that's
So
how.
it's a thing that
Yes,
we've experienced. It's a thing.
yes. You had.
Nigeria was there. Also, do you remember when we were in primary school, we had teachers coming from Ghana, Liberia?
Oh yes, all my teachers were from Ghana. I
Yes.
literally had only 2 teachers who were Nigerians, and one of them, funny enough, was a student in my school. She went to the same primary school as me, went to secondary school, came back and became a teacher. So it was so interesting to see. A lot of the teachers were Ghanaians, and they were fantastic.
Nigeria was that place where you go to school, you go to secondary school, you go to university, and then the next thing that I'm moving to Nigeria, I'm going to be a teacher in Nigeria.
Yes.
I'm going to work in Nigeria. Nigeria was that place.
Yes.
We had Ghanaian and Liberian teachers in my primary school, So whatever that thing was that made Nigeria so desirable that other countries in West Africa found it as in fact, not even just other West African nationalities.
You're talking about the ones, yes, in the diaspora. They were all coming home.
Lebanese people were coming to Nigeria to live and work.
My grandmother's neighbors growing up were from Lebanon.
Yeah.
They had come, they had decided Nigeria is going to be home to us. I don't even want to name names. We have friends in common who, they're originally Lebanese. A lot of people don't know because, they grew up with us in Calabar.
Where people want to migrate to, like we were those people, So it really, really breaks my heart to see that we have the current landscape we have is making it look like we have to beg for those things. We almost have to it feels like it's out of reach,
Right? And it's not. It really isn't.
We've lived it. We've done it.
Yes. So what this says to me is it just takes people having a vision, and really picking the right leaders who they believe can lead us back to that time when Nigeria was the desirable place to go to.
Yes.
And it's possible. We have those people, people who it's not about, how much wealth can I amass? You can't even spend all that money in your lifetime and in the lifetime of your generations yet to come. And that's the commonwealth of the people that can be used to develop this Nigeria that we so love and
Oh my gosh. So to me, I find it so funny, like when diasporans go to any part of the world, no matter where they are in the world, their hearts, their souls is longing for Nigeria.
Oh yes, we have these conversations all the time.
My friends, my sisters tease me all the time. They're like, "You're not even in Nigeria, but you know everything about it." I'm yes. I wake up to Nigerian news. Like, are you kidding me?
Exactly.
So that is a place that we love. I'm so glad we had this conversation, and I'm so glad that we are going to have the opportunity to peel back on the elements of being an immigrant and also like elements of the diaspora experience. And I hope that people found this conversation helpful. They found it at best inspirational. They found it nostalgic, and hopefully they find other things that we're going to talk about in the coming conversations really helpful. Any parting words?
Thank you so much for having me. This has been fun. And, I just want, I'm looking forward to more conversations. I just need people to know the Nigeria that we know.
Yeah.
Not the things that you see on the news, but the people.
The people.
The people are the ones who make up this beautiful country that is ours, that we love so much. So I look forward to more conversations. I'm so excited, for what's to come. And I really enjoyed myself today.
Yay, that's the goal. That's the goal. All right, everyone. Thank you for hanging out with us. And we hope to see you on the next conversation we're going to have. We're really just trying to build community, to build a common space where we can all just share that experience of being in the diaspora. Until next time, bye, guys.